back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Charles?
I'm doing great, Rich. I hope you and everyone there is doing fantastic. Hope your Thanksgiving was wonderful.
It certainly was. It certainly was. Right back at you. What game are you doing this week? We're getting this.
Minnesota at Atlanta.
Man, that is a fantastic game. And
yeah, we're pretty excited.
Well, you've been doing a lot. You have been doing a lot of Vikings games lately, Charles.
This will be our third. Yes.
So
right.
What do you see from this team that makes you think they're Super Bowl worthy, ready to go?
In the past, it's all been defense. Offense, don't screw it up, as you might expect from a defensive-minded head coach like Mike Zimmer. I remember 2 years ago doing games with him and Mike telling me, I want 21 points. 21 points and we win. 21 points and we win. Defense-centric deal. Okay, great. They're still a defensive-centric team, but this offense can score and has been scoring. And I think that the bottom line is at some point they've got to just be all in and buy into Case Keenum and just let this bad boy go because he's operating really well. Case is right now, as you know, Rich, he's the guy that when you go to the party and you greet Case and you say hello to him, people are looking over Case's shoulder to see who else there is to talk to. There's got to be someone better here to talk to. But instead, he's really that guy. You should shake his hand and spend some time with him because that offense is humming right now. Because in the last 4 weeks, the defense hasn't had to be as on point because they're putting up big points on the offensive end and give Keenum a lot of that credit.
Well, I mean, I had him on the show yesterday, Charles, and I asked him, does he want to hear from Mike Zimmer that he's the guy? And is he playing football like he's looking over his shoulder? And he basically said no, that I feel like I prove myself every single time out that that's the way this business is. He even turned the tables on me. He goes, do you look over your shoulder when you're broadcasting every day? You know, I mean, I kind of found that answer. I love that answer. That's the answer you want to hear, I guess.
It's a great answer. And I would tell Case that I look over my shoulder every day. And that's part of what fuels me. So it's just a matter of how you go about it. But I actually wrote down in my notes getting ready for a Minnesota game a couple weeks ago that to Case's point, without me having heard that out of his mouth, I wrote down in my notes, Rich, Case Keenum plays like he's not worried about anyone taking his job. He does not play like a backup trying to keep the job. He plays like a starter who knows it's his job. And that's really unusual for a guy in his position. So what he told you, I think that verifies exactly what he's talking about, what he's doing. I don't care what Mike Zimmer says. I just go out and play.
And it's so great. I mean, I mentioned it yesterday. I might as well talk about it with you here, certainly, since you'll probably be calling some of these games throughout the month of December on Fox. The NFC is right there, man. It's unbelievable because the Vikings, when they're done with Atlanta, they play Carolina, which plays the Saints, and after they're done playing Carolina, the Saints play the Falcons on NFL Network, and then you've got the Rams in Arizona. They take on the Eagles after the Eagles take on the Seahawks, who take on the Rams after the Rams are done with the Eagles. I mean, it's going to all come out in the wash here in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
That it is, and it's so much fun. And to me, last weekend, that Rams-New Orleans game was so much fun to target as one to watch. But what I came away from it was going into it after what happened to the Rams in Minnesota, okay, what this team that's figuring out how to win and getting comfortable with their status, would they get off the deck and have that kind of performance at home? And they did. This is really impressive what's going on in Los Angeles now with Sean McVay, Wade Phillips running the defense, and that team playing the way that they're playing, Jared Goff, right on down the line. Because that Minnesota game was a bruising, tough, emotional affair. People look at the final score, Rich, and they see 24-7. It was 7-7 in the fourth quarter. And remember, Goff hit Cooper Kupp with that pass that would have taken them to the 1-yard line, and they could have gone in up. They could have, been ahead in the fourth quarter. And he got hit, fumbled, and Minnesota took over and really never looked back. But that was a tough game for them to bounce back from emotionally, and they did it, and they did it with style.
And then just Goff versus Wentz on the same field, right?
Yes.
Year two, where it means so much, could mean it means it's kind of neat. I'm kind of bummed that the league decided to just go with the same old matchup like Ravens Steelers instead of like maybe turning the page here. This is this is a newfangled situation, and I understand that Green Bay's not in it and Dallas isn't in it, and that might suppress some ratings, but do you think that this is a changing of the guard away here in the NFL?
I think it's one where we're introducing that new guard. You know, it's not a total change yet because Aaron Rodgers is going to work his way back, and I think he's far from being done. But I do think that just off of last year, and Rich, you know history tells us that when you draft quarterbacks that high in the draft, they're paired together for life, right? And at the end of last year, the narrative was very simply, Wentz looks like he's going to be a player, Goff looks like a bust. And now we've got two guys. Neither one of them is any close to a bust. Both of them playing at a really high level, empowering their teams. And now we have two that'll be linked. We're thinking for the next 10 to 12 years, a big-time play. So every time we lament about the top quarterbacks retiring, going out, Peyton Manning's retired. When will Tom Brady go? How long can Drew Brees play? Oh, yeah, that's right. Here comes Wentz. Here comes Goff. Dak Prescott's struggling now, but he's a guy that you would identify as on the rise. The game keeps turning itself over even when we think that it won't. And that's why that matchup is so compelling, especially considering what Goff went through last year where, frankly, he had no chance in that situation that Los Angeles had last year.
Yeah, and then you got
McVay and what they do. Now he has an opportunity to be a good player. He had no shot last year.
Yeah, and you have Matt Ryan, who's going to be right there in front of you this week on Fox. Charles Davis, Kevin Burkhardt with the call of Vikings and Falcons, and obviously Cam and Russell Wilson. You know, things are that there are a new millennium bunch of quarterbacks, obviously in a league where you still can't fill out 32. Spots for starters. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Tennessee, Charles. Putting your volunteer hat on, speak on behalf of the volunteer alumni base here, certainly somebody who played for this team. What do you think does Tennessee need to do right now?
That is the whatever million-dollar question you want to ask, Rich. They made a decision as an administration to hire Greg Schiano. So let me touch that real quick. Obviously, the fan base wasn't real excited, and I feel like a lot of the fan base brought in Penn State to buttress their argument, but the main thing was they didn't get him. What stems from all that, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, and this is no aspersions on the administration there, but it's something that I would have told them, you've got to settle the John Gruden question because John was the people's choice yet again, and understandably so. And what I mean by settling it, Rich, is if you don't approach John and get a definitive answer one way or the other, or just even announce that you're not going in that direction, your fan base still thinks that he might be a possibility. So no matter who you hire or otherwise, that's a thud. We went through it. Florida went through it years ago. Remember when they hired Ron Zook? The problem was they went and they visited with Bob Stoops and Mike Shanahan first, and they hired Ron Zook, and the Florida people lost their mind. This is a similar situation in Knoxville. Now they're talking about finding a Tennessee guy, bringing someone home, doing it that way. The problem is there's no obvious guy. If T. Martin is that guy, I'm all behind it. I love T. But T hasn't been a head coach. And I think that's part of the hesitancy of the administration right now. We're in a situation now where they really wanted a sitting head coach who's been there and done it before. And we have a team that's not very tough right now. And I think that's what the appeal was with Schiano. So if people think, okay, well, Schiano's record wasn't good, it wasn't this, it wasn't that, in a lot of ways he was exactly what our program needed. Now, make the move, and face it, Rich, you know this better than anyone. What coach really is going to look at our job now and say, well, that's the place for me right now because the administration made a decision, there's a howl of protest, they rescinded the decision. Are they going to be there for me when I need them? It's a legitimate question that each candidate's going to ask now.
Well, that's why, to me, it shouldn't matter if T. Martin's been a head coach somewhere before.
Yep.
He's been part of big-time program football. He's been a coach. He knows what it's like to coordinate offenses at big-time schools. Give him a shot if he wants it. I don't think you have a choice, Charles.
And I would jump in wholeheartedly and support him as much as we can. Remember, we also have Casey Rogers, who's a defensive coordinator with the New York Jets. He would be someone that we should take a good hard look at as having Tennessee ties. You know, Philip Fulmer is still around the program. Coach Fulmer's still there. He's advising the president of the university on a number of things. I'm quite sure he's heavily involved at this stage of how are we going to get out of this. So if we're going to bring T home, bring him home, and let's surround him with the people that he needs, the support that he needs. Because right now, to your point, we're an abject mess. And if we're going to stay home, T. Martin's a great selection for that. If they're still trying to find someone out there, that's a tough one. And what I mean by out there is a sitting head coach who's had success elsewhere. I think it's going to be hard to pry that person away from their current place, because why would you? I think some of those coaches may maneuver and get better contracts where they are.
Like Gundy? Mike Gundy?
That's a possibility. Here's the thing. Mike Gundy, who I happen to like a lot, and I've known Mike for years, trace his career. He's been at Oklahoma State as either a player or a coach 23 out of the last 26 years in Stillwater. In Stillwater, he's got a major rivalry with Oklahoma. They don't beat Oklahoma that often, even though they're competing better now than they ever have. But there's no serious outcry because he doesn't beat Oklahoma consistently that's going to be a problem for him and his job. In our place, we can have someone who can compete with Nick Saban and beat him. And guess what? No one's done that in a long time. We've got to be able to beat, in our own state now, Vanderbilt. Never thought I'd ever utter those words, Rich. Never thought I'd utter those words. We can't beat them right now. I mean, this is a whole different deal. So I just don't know if Mike Gundy is going to say to himself, after all those years in a really great spot, doing a fantastic job with tremendous resources and money, do I really want to go take on that challenge, or am I comfortable right here and doing well with a chance most years to compete for the Big 12?
I got a 30.
That'd be a key question for him.
I got you. You're not wrong, man. 30 seconds I have left with you. Ask him the poll question that we're going to reveal next segment, Brockman. We might as well reveal it here.
All right, Charles Davis. What's the best Bill Murray comedy? Caddyshack, Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, Stripes, Kingpin.
Yeah, we know Chuck Pagano chooses Groundhog Day. What do you got?
Well, I go with Caddyshack with him, but I still think, Rich, that time that you were there with Ivan Reitman and Mike Mayock, and Mike told Ivan, that Stripes, fantastic, right till you rolled into Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. Yep. I'd never forget that.
The absolute all-timer. I remember when you told that story, I was on the floor. You laughed harder every time you told the story.
I still have. Charles,
it's all-timer.
Take care of yourself, brother. That's
true. You guys too. Hey, guys, take care now.
All right, Chuck, be good.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.